Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Sid.
Oh, hey, Jeff. I was having some trouble with my microphone. Sorry about that. Sorry?
That's a, but she's going to make you host, and she's also started the recording.
Yeah, I think she's made me host already. So thank you,
Okay.
Shing, if you're still around. I know she had a conflict, so she had to go somewhere. Um, give me 1 second. Let me give me 1 second. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's continue where we left off actually. So as of last week, well, the week before that, last we talked about was our final design, and Jeff and I talked after that, and we went over our authentication method. Um, the one issue was as I started flushing it out more while writing, um, a lot of the conversation we'd had before, like the concerns we raised, it seemed like I was wondering if I might be overlooking any concerns, and I wanted to go over it one more time actually, especially with this authentication method and where we left off 2 weeks ago. So um,
And by authentication method, you mean the secret key access key
well,
versus
yeah,
IAM?
yeah, exactly. So the thing is, during our discussions, we discussed a lot. I believe Ben, you brought up some concerns that I'm just worried we might be ignoring concerns. That's the one thing. And what I want to do today is make sure that we're not. Um, and let me start by sharing and showing you what I mean. So this is where we left off 2 weeks ago. So just to give a quick recap. Um, I mean, these things remain the same: bucket class, and bucket request. Here we have our regular authentication method, which is access key and secret key, where you provide a credential secret name, and in that secret we go and add the access key and secret key, and then that secret also serves as the gate which prevents the pod from starting up until the secret is created. Um, so that thing is pretty well flushed out, and then it shows up in the bucket.json under access key secret key. Um, now with IAM, um, the way we decided to enable that was we would have an authentication type, um, either key based or IAM based. So key or IAM. Um, and then parameters would go here, and then there would just be a list of opaque parameters that say these are the permissions that you request, and the driver is supposed to provision IAM credentials and or provision a service account that gets tied to a workload identity. Now, tying it to workload identity is the part that I have some questions about. Um, so take Google for example, and let's say you are creating a. Let me just pull up the Google G Cloud workload identity. So yeah, so there is a step where we need to. So there is a step where there's like a weird dependency issue. So we have to. Yeah, I think the issue is with the service account. So say you have a service account, and you have to provide that service account name while requesting the IAM style authentication. um, but if you're in a situation where um, another service account. So let me ask this. So if you have one if you have a pod with one service account, and is there a situation where the service account can be provisioned for the pod, as in you don't know the name up front?
Well, you can leave it empty and you get the default, right? That's the.
What if I want to use the same service account? So let me put it this way: is the service account token the actual physical value? Is that provisioned up front? Like uh, so
No,
when
I
I
mean, well, when you
uh
create a service account, there is a controller in KCM that automatically generates tokens for service accounts. So the service account is an object and the token is a secret object. And the creation of a service account will cause KCM to make a token that matches that service account, usually almost immediately. I mean, there's always some delay, but that's been my experience.
right. um
Now,
so
now it could be that's only for certain styles of authentication within Kubernetes. Maybe if you're in Google and you create a service account, something different happens because it knows that it's not supposed to generate a token. It's
okay,
supposed to go
yes.
talk to some API.
Okay, so
Yeah.
okay, so here's the thing. What if I don't want to use, so the thing is, um in order to do this correctly, the user would have to create a service account upfront, and then have that service account be put in here in the bucket access. Now,
Right.
um, if
Or
and
you could rely on some defaulting mechanism, but whatever the default is, it would have to exist.
yeah, we could, yeah, exactly, it has to exist up front. And the other issue is, if I have a namespace where I want the service account, uh, I don't want the default service account to get certain credentials. See, the thing is, um, it might not be for security reasons as much as you don't want one service account to have all of the credentials. Like, um, let's say I have 3 different buckets I use here, and I want one service account to be for one bucket, not all 3 buckets. Just from a manageability perspective,
Just
then
to be precise, the service account doesn't get more credentials every time you create a bucket access.
it gets
It's the
associated with different
yeah,
backend stuff.
some authorization happens related to that service account on some back end somewhere. But the
Yeah,
credentials you use remain the same no matter how many bucket accesses you generate.
I, I guess credentials is the wrong word.
Yeah,
Yeah, more
it's
roles,
authorization.
right?
Or-
Yeah, authorization. So if it has access, or if it provides access to more than one bucket, and from a manageability perspective, I let's say I don't want it to um, have provide access for more than one bucket. Now I'm forced to create multiple service accounts, which is okay. Um, but if the workload already depends on the default service account for a bunch of other privileges, now we are asking for anything but cozy. If the service account is used for anything other than cozy, then we're asking the user to associate, so let's say there's a service account that is
well,
used
hold
for.
on. I think I
Mhm.
see where you're going, but like
Yeah,
this feels like just an inherent disadvantage of using IAM style authentication is that you're using one credential for multiple purposes. Of course, you're going to have situations where you can't do exactly what you want, but like that's
problem
what.
is we're forced to do it. That's my issue, in the sense
No, you're not, because you could just use
only one
access
service
key
account.
secret key, right? Like if this bothers you, you switch back to access key secret key and use that, and the problem solved. Like
Um,
it's a disadvantage of IAM style authentication that your identity determines what you can do, and you can't have multiple identities. So, but
okay.
I I remember when Saad and Andrew were here way back at the beginning, and they were pushing for IAM style authentication. And my interpretation of their request was like, it's just so convenient. Surely we should just let people do it. Like, not like it enables some amazing use case that you couldn't otherwise achieve. It's just, we have this thing, it already works. Like, it's simple, and it's arguably more secure than access key, secret key, at least for a single pod and a single bucket. So let's just enable it. But yeah, when you have multiple pods and multiple buckets and multiple service accounts, and you start to worry about which ones can access which buckets, of course it's going to get ugly. And there's nothing you can do about that. Other than switch to access key, secret key, where you get fine-grained control again.
Makes sense. Yeah, so and also the other thing is our responsibility with IAM doesn't end here. We need to work with cloud SDKs to mine workload identity credentials from Cozy really, or Kubernetes. So current SDKs, they know how to get say current object storage SDKs know how to get credentials from instance metadata. So they know how to talk to the instance metadata service and get credentials. Cozy would have to either, they can get it from bucket.json, where they'll get the service account name, but it doesn't end there. So just because they have the service account name doesn't mean they can actually access.
I thought that if it was a service account, we wouldn't put anything in there. It would just be like a sentinel that says use the service account, and then wherever the service account,
the service account token.
well, no, the whole idea is Kubelet has already plumbed that in somewhere, right? The service account token is available in your namespace because Kubelet made it available. And so all we need to do is just say, hey, go use the thing that Kubelet plumbed in for you. And that's what you get.
Do you know where it goes?
There is not off the top of my head, but there's a standard place that you can go in any, and it can be disabled. You can have a pod that has no service account token in it, which slightly speeds up, how fast your pod comes up because Kubelet has less work to do. But if you don't disable it, Kubelet always puts it in a standard place. And again, we'd have to look up what that is, but.
Yeah, so take this scenario where there's image pull secrets, and that is associated with the service account, patch service account default. Yeah, I'm hearing some background noise. Okay, so take this example. So how would this work? I just want to go through the example to make sure we cover all bases. I'm coming back to the original issue I raised because I saw this example and I figured this is a good example to work off of. So add image pull secrets service account. So you patch a service account to add image pull secrets.
But image pull secrets are consumed by Kubelet, right? So Kubelet will when it's trying to start up the pod, it'll look and see what the service account for the pod is and get that service account's secrets because it needs them. And then and it can also get the image pull secrets and use them to go pull the images, but it doesn't plumb those into the pod or anything. They're just used by Kubelet. The actual service account token does get plumbed in so that if you try to create a Kubernetes client inside your pod, it will have all of the appropriate information to go find the Kubernetes API endpoint for the cluster that it's running in and the identity of the service account. And all the standard Kubernetes SDKs know how to go find that token as one of their many bootstrapping methods for getting credentials. And of course they have fallbacks and optional ways of doing other things, but they just know. So
I see. So yeah, this another question I had was, again, just these things need to be resolved. We need to have a clear idea of this. So a service account can have.
But our responsibility as like the Cozy specifiers would just be to like tell you where it is. Right. So like if there is a standard place that Kubelet is going to put it and we want to just expose that to the SDKs, we could just, as part of the Cozy spec, say, if if your bucket.json says service account authentication, then the credentials are in this file, and we spell it out. And then how you get from that to like an SDK reading that file and doing the rest of the work is somebody else's problem. Now, we're interested in that solution, but like we don't have to solve it, right? We can punt on that as long as we're clear about like the service, when you see service account in your bucket.json, this is the file you should go read.
Makes sense. As long, yeah, like you said, as long as we're clear about it, we document it well, I think that's okay.
And we would want a proof of concept that there is at least a way to then take that service account and go do all the things you would need to do to go access. And I'm not enough of an expert to know how you would do that, but I do worry that like service accounts might look different whether you're running in like an on-prem cloud versus like a Google cloud versus like an Amazon cloud, or like
Well,
the
the driver
formats.
will have to do. Yeah, and one more thing is, so the driver would have to set the service account to point to or to assume the role of a cloud service account. And when it does that, there are like roles or IAM workload identity user. So the roles, or I think the user ID or the service account ID, the cloud service account ID, is added as an annotation into the service account itself. So in order to revoke, you need to remove the annotation from the Kubernetes service account. So it looks like the Kubernetes service account gets an annotation from from tying this service account to the cloud-based service account, and that needs to be taken out. That should be a part of the orchestration somehow.
I mean, you could go create a GKE cluster and play around and see if this just happens magically. I assume it does.
No, I mean, only we'll have access to Kubernetes resources. The driver won't.
No, I mean, to see functionally if the Google service account gets annotated, or if the Kubernetes service account gets annotated with the Google service account automatically when you're running in like a GKE. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm saying you could go determine that empirically.
Okay.
Without too much trouble. But you're right. Then we have the responsibility as the cozy sidecar to, when we're minting a credential or when we're granting access to a bucket, and it is a service account style access. Yeah, we got to go pull the information and shove it down into the driver and say, give access to this thing. And what that is could vary from implementation to implementation. We have to deal with all of them. So it's our problem.
Here, add the IAM GKE GCP service account equal to annotation to Kubernetes service account. So you need to add the annotation, and then revoking would mean, actual revoke, that is disassociate, and then remove the annotation.
But that's not us. We're just interested in what the GKE account is that is associated with the service account, right? We're not going to be attaching or detaching these things. If someone else does that, and then we just go see what it is and pull it, and then push it down into the driver, and then the driver goes and talks to the GKE or the Google control plane. Assuming this is like a Google, it goes and talks to that control plane and says, okay, this service account needs access to this bucket, and then that just happens.
Why is this annotation needed to the Kubernetes service account?
I don't know. I mean, I assume it's so that
We can list it and we'll know.
can do things inside GKE.
Okay, maybe that's all it is.
I mean, it would matter like if you're going to like create a PVC, for example, you'd want the I forget what a GCEPD that gets created to be owned by the person who created that PVC. So like the GCEPD driver has an interest in knowing what your Google service account is when you do something, so that when it goes and talks to the Google control plane, it can act as you.
Yeah. Um, yeah, yeah, maybe it's just for that. Yeah, but yeah, my question is more coming from the idea that do we need to support this step?
We probably need a Google person to tell us that.
Okay, let's see what AWS EKS workload identity. Yeah, I am roles for service accounts. There you go. So okay, great. Create an attach an IAM policy. This is what we're interested in. Service account annotations. Yeah, it seems like annotations needed everywhere. Um, Existing cluster, okay. To annotate a service account with an IAM role, use the following command to annotate your service account. Yeah, it seems like it's universal. I mean, I've seen only two of them. Azure Kubernetes workload. I bet it's going to use the same thing here. Manage entities, obtain system design, manage entity, bring your own, and create a cluster using kubelet entity. Okay. Azure docs are probably harder to follow. Azure Kubernetes entity service account. Well, yeah, I'm assuming the same thing is needed here. The reason I'm going over this is Kubernetes service accounts, normal users, Azure AD integration. All right, so Azure Kubernetes service, RBAC reader. Right, I have to look into this more, but the reason I'm going over this is I want to see what Cozy needs to do, what it needs to orchestrate to make this happen. So at least in case of Google Cloud and Amazon. So sorry, go ahead, Ben.
I was gonna say I totally agree. Like that's what we need to do is go through an example of, what does this look like in each of the implementations we care about, and can we make it work?
Right. At least the most important three clouds we need to consider. We could even put Alibaba Cloud and DigitalOcean in the back burner for now. Not that we don't care about them, but I'm assuming if we do these three, we would have covered 90% of the cases.
Well, I'll just throw this out there. We could put them all in the back burner and only deliver access key, secret key, and punt on the rest.
Look.
No, I'm just saying. I'm saying we could do that. Like I you don't want to, and I don't really want to. But if it turns into like a big
I want to
source of effort.
No, let me be clear about my stance. I want to move forward. But Google Cloud is pushing for workload identity, and they are a valued member here. So because of that, I want to. That's all it is.
I'm just saying you could make it a 2.0 kind of a thing, right? We could say, look, we just got to get something out there.
That was our original stance. I agree. That was our original stance. But Tim Hawkins said it clearly, that unless we have a complete story around, maybe not complete, a clear story around workload identity, he is still like holding it back. And it's fair. It's okay. It's a feature request. Has to be done at some point. I mean, it comes at the cost of not pushing it right away, but it's okay. We are kind of gated on Tim approving, so we'll work with it. But just to be clear, me included, all of us who are attending the meetings regularly, we're all thinking that we should move forward with what we have today. We should get to alpha state already. And we're kind of disconnected from the API reviewers. I see that as one of the issues we're facing. And I'm thinking about doing something about it. Well, I'm not thinking, I'm doing something about it. Basically, I want to involve Saad or Tim in the process a little bit more, because they're really hard to reach. And the worst part is they have no clue what's going on here right now. So at least I plan to just ping them about the details of where we're at just every week. That way they're not completely lost. Maybe they don't even have to respond, they just have to look at it.
Well, I do agree that the Google guys have showed up more than anyone, and we want to. And if they're making it a requirement that we have an IAM solution for at least Google in the short term, then we should do that. But like, we should also put it on them to show up and tell us how they would do it.
Right.
Because I don't know, and you don't know. I don't know if anyone else here has enough familiarity with like exactly how GCS works in a GKE context. Can you just take your Kubernetes service account and go and access a GCS bucket with that if the appropriate operations have been done outside of Kubernetes? Like, I imagine you can, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's where we're all at.
And
so go ahead.
And I was gonna say, and I'm not gonna spend the time to go find out because I'm too busy. but someone who really cares should do it and tell us.
No, even if I find out, it's not going to be the same as someone who architected it. See, the thing is, I can find it out from a user perspective, but when designing an API around it, I'd want to know what the reasoning behind some of these style of authentication was. I have a fair bit of idea because Minio client is used in AWS, simply because it has a very focused footprint. And we support in our client we're fully AWS compatible. What that means is you can use the Minio client in place of the AWS SDK for talking to S3. So we support in our client workload identity, and so I have a fair bit of idea, but um, again, it's not the same as knowing GKE's or Azure's workload identity mechanism. So that's why I wanted to kind of verify, at least with the people here, if we have everything needed to support, at least in terms of like our conversation. Because if I go ahead and tell, I'm glad we saw this annotation thing, because if I'd gone ahead and if Tim had reviewed it and he'd come back and said, hey, this won't work because there's no orchestration around setting this annotation. Sometimes this annotation is used for more than just listing. But you can't even list the annotations.
So hold on. To be clear, I think we have to not necessarily prototype, but like proof of concept each scheme working before we put it in the spec, and like have someone walk through the steps manually and do all the things to convince ourselves that it could work. That seems like a prerequisite for putting it in the spec, is at least we've done it one time manually and seen that it gave us the result that we expected.
Pretty straight. Okay. That can be done. No problems at all, actually.
And that would save off any objections of like, we write it in the spec and then Tim reads it and says this won't work, right? Because we could say, well, we tried it and it did work.
Fair enough. Okay, let's give it a try. So I can do that because I have access to Google Cloud, and I can just spin up a cluster. So yeah, we have clusters. We have Google Cloud clusters at Minio. Yeah. It's just we're going down a path. When I get into identity, there's a whole bunch of possible ways to implement authentication authorization for object storage. Another one is LDAP. Another one is Active Directory. Another one is OpenIDC, OpenID Connect, OpenID Connect. So it's a rabbit hole, and yeah, I want to keep our API very focused, and only add new identity mechanisms or new custom extensions uh, as needed. But I can tell you at least something like LDAP is a requirement that's going to come up, and we need to have a clear story around it. Especially for organizations that run object storage on-prem and also on the cloud. They tend to have external identity providers. That's either tied to LDAP or say even GitHub OAuth or whatever, Facebook OAuth. I'm just throwing out examples there, but generally an external identity provider, because they want to have the same roles regardless of what they're using, like what infrastructure they're using. And so Cozy will have to know how to deal with that. And the part that Cozy has to know is, let's say it's LDAP, and for LDAP, if you need to have some orchestration into the pod, some kind of data into the pod, then Cozy needs to do that. So before we introduce all that, I just want to make sure we're really focused and we get whatever we do today right. But I am pretty sure that we're going to deal with a lot of identity related stuff going forward. Because just even yesterday or something, maybe a few days back, we had a customer who only wanted to use workload identity with Minio, and they were moving away from S3 to Minio, and they're in China and they're having issues with the accessibility, and the thing was, um, our SDK supports, our client SDK supports it, but Minio is not workload identity based, our servers are not, and that was such a strict requirement for them. Now we're looking at what we can do, but I presume that anyone who's going to use object storage using Cozy will have strict requirements like that too. That's where I'm coming from when I say people are going to want this pretty, people are going to want different authentication mechanisms and authorization mechanisms. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm nodding my head, but you can't hear me.
No, my Wi-Fi just went out for a second. That's why I was asking. Anyway, so yeah, so all right. So another thing to add to the list is just orchestrating this annotation. So we'll manually go over the steps. We can do it maybe even here. I don't know how long it'll take to set up a Google Cloud GKE cluster, but let's say it's quick. Let me choose that. You go to GKE, and then you set up a cluster. Yeah, so let's just say I have the permissions to enable this. It gets enabled, and we can actually go through the steps right now and just make sure. Oh God, I don't know if I have the permissions. Let me see that one. Wait, what? Yeah, I can't create clusters on this account, but yeah, I probably have some account access where I can do it. If not, I can get access and we can try it out. Yeah. No, not on this one. Oh, wait, hold on. Create, okay. There's a pay per pod model. That's interesting. Autopilot cluster one, private. I don't care about the Well, control plane authorized networks. I don't know what that means. Control plane doesn't block untrusted non-GCP source IPs from accessing the Kubernetes master or HTTPS. Yeah, okay. You plan to access the cluster using kubectl from outside. You must at least add one. Okay, no, I'm not doing that. Okay. So let's just go with the default 10, 10, 10, 0, 24. Why would you do 22? Oh, 17. Okay. These subnet masks are weird. Oh, so this is a 28-bit mask. Oh, okay. Okay. Let's just go with what it says. 172.16. What was it? 0028. 172.16. 0. I wonder why they go with like weird 28-bit masks and 17-bit masks. I mean, it's weird because it's not intuitive, like how many IP addresses you get just from looking at it, unless you set up those things regularly.
If you do this from the command line, you don't have to specify anything. You just take the defaults.
I see.
It's strange that the
Okay.
GUI is harder to use than the command line.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, they have a cloud shell. Interesting. Anyway, so let this autopilot cluster start up. We need to enable something called workload metadata equal to GC metadata as an option here. So not shift tab, control tab, yeah. Where do you add this?
I don't
On
know.
a specific
I've
node
never
pool.
put.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so I don't think we can do it with this. We need a node pool. It can't be an autopilot cluster. It looks like. So yeah, there's weird issues with this that we need to figure out. Okay, so since it's being provisioned, I can't even delete it. But anyway, so yeah, let me go through the steps. Maybe I'll even do a recording of it if needed, screen recording. Actually, it might be easier to just do it from the command line, like you mentioned. But let me go through the steps and I'll see what's needed. But it looks like extra orchestration steps are needed. I mean, we'll just have to let the driver mention this part, but this annotation setting and removal, Cozy has to orchestrate. And I don't, so far it doesn't seem like there's anything more required from Cozy side. But to confirm it, I can obviously, like Ben was mentioning, I'll just run it once and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so
My intuition is that the work that we're going to have to do is to extract the information from the service account in the access granting sidecar. When we see a bucket access and it has a service account name in it, we're going to have to go crack open the service account and pull out the relevant details so that we can shove them down to the driver through the gRPC that says grant access to bucket or whatever. I forget what it's called, the gRPC. But
yeah,
that's the key part, right? And then we need to know that like the thing that we pass down is enough that a driver will be able to go grant access on that bucket to the service account, and we've uniquely identified it and have the
okay,
right
so check this out. So
information.
when you do that, you don't actually, so if you're using, yeah, here's the thing. If you're using Google Kubernetes engine, you don't give the value of the service account. You say GSA is Google service account, KSA is Kubernetes service account. You just provide the name.
Right, but somehow there's a way to get the actual service account at runtime, right? Because the whole point of this is something needs it. so that there has to be a
That'll be
way
the
to,
application, right?
huh?
That'll be the application, right?
Sid,
I honestly don't know.
I think Amazon has a way of doing what you just described. The driver would just pass the name down to the underlying storage system, and the service account name is mapped to credentials on, or mapped to a user on the storage side.
Oh
And
yeah,
you
yeah.
don't pull
We don't need to touch the credentials. We just need the identifier.
Yes. And I guess in the AWS case that I've just looked at a little bit, the identifier is the name and namespace of the service account, the unique name.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not enough to uniquely identify a service account across all of Amazon.
No, there's some mapping on the back end that takes that namespace service account name and maps it to an Amazon account or something.
And there's a guarantee that the cozy driver is running in a context where it can perform that mapping.
The cozy driver doesn't. Yeah, the cozy driver has to know how to do that. Like, that's the assumption. It needs to have, in this case, the project ID. And under the project ID, it creates a Google service account or a role, let's say, that gets mapped to a Kubernetes service account. So it's not all of the cloud, it's just under that project ID. Sorry, am I answering your question right? Can you repeat your question? Maybe I'm getting it wrong. Ben?
Is it? Oh, no, I thought you were talking to Jeff. I'm just saying, like, we have to go through this process and see what it looks like. Have a Kubernetes cluster, have a service account, have a bucket that was created outside of Kubernetes. See if we can take a Kubernetes service account and find the thing that we need to grant access to the bucket, and then see if a pod running with that service account has a credential that can be used to access the bucket.
Okay,
right?
so let
Like,
me see.
that's the exercise.
Okay, so let me do.
I'm sure it'll take like a couple hours of legwork to get through that exercise. Unfortunately.
Let's
But
see if I'm, if it works. We'll do a TGIF Kubernetes style thing. There's a 4, I think. Okay. Gcloud create GKE cluster. Your container cluster create name. And I think this is where you set this value. Oh, there. Node pools update. Okay, so yeah, they show you how to do it. Node pools create, clusters, cluster name. Okay. Oh, they give you the whole thing. Okay, so let's just copy this. So my project ID. Gcloud get project ID. Okay. Gcloud list project. A projects list. Okay, so let me go with the. I think was the one. Okay, and Gcloud. I'm just going to go through the steps. I think it's pretty straightforward to set it up. Right. What happened? Bad value project. Oh yeah. All right, let's see how that goes. Now what? Wait, bad value must be in format of project ID dot svc dot id dot cook, and isn't that what we've put here?
I've never played with any kind of workload pools, so that this is beyond me. And that
Well, I mean, just
svc.id.goog, I've never seen that either.
yeah, I've never seen the Google thing, but no, this project, the Google is funny, but the project ID, I mean, like in terms of just a regular command line interface, I feel like this is exactly what this format is saying. Bad value must be in the format project. Oh, maybe it should have the thing around it.
Maybe they want the string value instead of the number value.
That
I don't know. Maybe the cluster already has to exist, or are you creating the cluster with this command? This
no,
is
it
the
just
one that
says bad
creates the
argument.
cluster. Okay.
It's just like invalid value. Um, project id.svc.id.cook. That's what I've got. Okay, maybe you know what? I think I know what my. Oh no, never mind.
But maybe take off the brackets, square brackets.
At the around it.
No square brackets, just project ID. Try that.
Yeah.
What's the complaint this time?
And even this is not fun. The fact that I have to scroll up like 100 lines to see what's going on. Oh, good container. Yeah, format. Project ID. What the hell? I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with this one. But let me just do echo. I'm just gonna
Yes.
type in the value. Oh, and I don't know what else to do here. I mean, we've all used command line interfaces. This is pretty straightforward, it seems like, but I don't know what the issue here is. I'm exactly following the same format. Like, you can't tell me this doesn't match this format. Maybe it's a project name. I think it's project name. They're not looking for a numerical value. So let me do Minio ops. There you go. Oh, these regions look like, but G-Cloud list regions, compute regions list, G-Cloud compute regions list. But yeah, so this is the kind of trouble I need to go through to make sure that I can, wow, US West 2. I'm just going to go with US West 2, US West 2. So I'll try this out. Oh, okay. Permission denied. Okay, US West 1.
No, there's just no hyphen at the end.
Oh, cluster.name is invalid. Okay, let's call it cozy.
You don't have permission to do this.
Yeah, so I'll get permissions to do this. I'll set up a cluster and I will try this out. But the resolution we got today was one, we need to do extra orchestration. That is something new, and two is yeah, we should just go through the steps once before we confirm and put it in the spec. Yeah, I'll ping you all
At
on.
least for Google. The question is then, do we want to do the same exercise for Amazon and for Azure to make sure that the same schema work and that we don't have other problems? Because I mean,
Azure
it's
is
a
the
lot.
only one I don't have access to. Listen, I mean, someone at Minio does, but Azure is the only one I'm completely unfamiliar with. So I can spend some time on. I mean, I can definitely do it for Amazon also, but I want someone to sign up for Azure. Someone else here to sign up to try Azure. Who can do that? Who do we have here?
I would say, yeah, push it back onto the community and say if Microsoft people want it to be supported, help us with this. Same thing with
Okay.
Amazon.
Yeah, I
Because
mean,
it's a lot of work to go prove that this actually works for
well, if
somebody.
you're going to put this in the spec, I mean, we need to. I mean, look, we're in a situation where someone needs to take the responsibility. So,
But
I think
we could take the stance that if no one does it for Azure, we'll leave them out of the spec, and it'll just be
okay,
Google and Amazon, right? That's the
that's
fallback
okay.
position.
Yeah, that's okay. Fair enough. Okay, so yeah, so basically what we learned was just try it out, see if it works, do that extra orchestration, and the response to. I think we're putting users in this weird situation where if they want one service account for a particular pod to have multiple privileges, they need to orchestrate that somehow. Um, like if they want if they want to have a service account be assume the role of uh, or let's say they're using service account for a particular workload to do one form of authentication and authorization, then they'd have to do that along with this um, and anything else that gets along the way. So let's say they use service account for some other service, maybe not for GK, maybe not for talking to the cloud or the infrastructure, but let's say they use it for um, provisioning access or authorizing the pod to some other service running in the same cluster. Let's say it's I don't know, some database. Um, so they'd have to go through the steps of um, provisioning for through cozy, then the database. I guess that shouldn't be a problem because everything happens asynchronously and you kind of just set the cozy spec as is and the database spec as it is. Like however you do it for the database using some declarative API, I think it should be okay. I was just wondering if you're introducing some kind of dependency, but we're not because everything's declarative. Yeah, don't worry about what I said. I think we're fine. Um, anything else you want to bring up? We're almost out of time, but
Did you get what you wanted out of the meeting, which was to review the
mhm.
access control details? Okay, that's good.
um, uh, I I have to go through it again. To be honest, I don't think service account name is going to do it here. Um, I'll have to see what gets plugged into the pod also.
I thought we had said if it was service account, we would just have a sentinel that says service account, and then you would go to the normal place to get your service account. I thought that was the plan because there is only one. Once you're inside the pod, all you have is what kubelet has plumbed down to you, and I don't think there's a circumstance where kubelet gives you more than one. So the name would be superfluous.
So where does the service account show up is my question. Like where in the pod does it show up? Or what's
I
the pod?
I can help you find that after the meeting, maybe.
Okay. So
I,
var
I,
and
was-
secret
I got a
key.
bunch more meetings today, but I'll go Google it and
Yeah,
send you
no,
the in Slack.
I believe it's
no, I
it's in
can figure it out. Figuring it out is super simple. Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
I believe it's in pod.spec.service account because every
Mm.
pod has
No,
to
no, no.
post.
We're talking about the file system inside the pod.
I see. Sorry.
because
And
kubelet
There.
injects the token for the service account into the pod unless you tell it not to.
This is the
And
path.
where
Bar run secrets kubernetes.io/service account.
oh okay, there you go.
Yeah. So I think then we just need to, so this path is standard. So in the API, we don't have to give the name of the service account.
Right. We just say service account and then with no value, and then we document that when you see that, you go look in that file path where the service account is and figure it out. And that's where Cozy's responsibility ends, is to point you towards the service account token.
So like
And
that, authentication and type.
No, like I have like, so let's say the pod in the bucket.json, like if you specify the service account name, at least the user can know that like his pod service account is different from what we expect, right? Otherwise, the user will get the denied error. He doesn't know what for reason.
no, you can only use the service account that the pod has. And if you specified a different one in your bucket access, that's your fault. That's what we
Okay.
had said last week, is that it's your responsibility to make sure the service account name in your bucket access and the service account name in your pod are the same. Otherwise, you just get bad results.
So in that case, we should add some annotation. Where would we do it though? Yeah, I think we should add an annotation in. Oh well, I guess the clouds already require you to do that. I was just thinking maybe we should add an annotation in the service account to say that this is for some particular backend role, but I guess the cloud already requires you to do that. The current workload identity mechanism already requires you to do that. I was just coming from the perspective of how would a user verify that a service account has the credentials that they want, or how would they look up and tell if a service account is actually
That shouldn't be their problem, right?
well, admin. Let's say someone's debugging.
Oh well, yeah. Then it's going to be dependent on the cloud. But
Yeah.
like, for any of this stuff to work under any circumstances, the kubelet plumbing or KCM plumbing has to be there, and we have to sort of rely on that plumbing to do its job. Otherwise, we have a lot more work to do to figure this out. We were hoping we could just piggyback on the stuff that already works. And I apologize. I have to jump to my 2 o'clock.
Yeah, I have to go too. I have a meeting. Oh, it's 2 o'clock where you are at. Okay. All right. Have a good rest of your afternoon, Ben. Have a good rest of your day. Rest of you, and Jiffin. Good night. But yeah, I'll update the spec once I try this out. And quick summary. I'm going to use type here in authentication again. Like there's authentication type here, and then there's authentication type here. If it's IAM, then access key secret key would be empty. If not, it would be set. And if it's IAM, it's assumed that the client has to just go read the service account from this path. All right. If you have any ideas or suggestions or any problems you see with this approach, ping me or anyone else on the Cozy Slack channel. I'll be monitoring it, so I'll know. That's all from me, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.